So thank you very much, Oana, first of all, because I think it's a very good point, and I sign up for the Leeuwarden Declaration if there will be one. And I would like to also join a little bit your statement on thinking about architecture more as a process than actually quality of space or objects, and also picking up on Professor De Jonge's presentation when he talked about architects as orchestrators of collaboration more than being in the very center of these processes. Why? Because I think, and I would like to be a bit provocative here, as I'm not an architect, I'm working with an organization that helps mostly community organizations across Europe to access spaces, to regenerate spaces, and also we help municipalities to work with these organizations. So I think there's a little bit too much architecture in the heritage discourse, and too much architecture in the heritage regeneration discourse. So I'll be a bit provocative, and I hope you don't mind this. The few points I would like to talk about in the coming minutes are about the dangers of overinvestment, the dangers of speculative redesign, and often instrumentalization of communities. A little bit talking about overinvestment. I would like to take you to Dubrovnik, where I work with the city council to develop a new governance model of this beautiful very old heritage structure, which is a quarantine. This was the space where people were taken when they arrived to the city if they were sick, so they were held there for 40 days. Now, this structure was for decades abandoned, and it was occupied. It was run by a number of community initiatives, artists, all kinds of creatives, until now the city, actually a few years ago, city decided to put a big renovation project into this complex. EU funding, a lot of requirements, a lot of actually change in the whole use of the space. And the new city administration inherited this project, and nobody really wants this anymore. So we're in the middle of the project that nobody really wants anymore. It costs a lot of money. It really suspends the activities for a long time, and it doesn't really add a lot of things to the building, because everybody agrees that everybody using the building agrees that this renovation was not really necessary. Now, this is a phenomenon that you might think it's very marginal. I come from Hungary. I see that a lot of renovation, a lot of architecture, a lot of construction is made for construction's sake, because there's a lot of money into this process, right? Let's be a bit realistic that some of the drivers of urban regeneration and heritage reuse are actually purely economic and not really functional. Now, I would like to give you a little bit of a contrast and bring you to The Hague, an organization called Die Besturing that has been using an industrial building for the last 12 years. It's a very simple process. They started renting the space. The municipality gave it over practically for free, but with a limited time ahead. Slowly, it's a group of architects and artists who started to adjust the building for their own uses, for their own needs. And after 10 years, they actually also collected some money from the tenants. So there's a very, viable business case. And they also collected enough money to buy the building on the long term from the municipality and to invest enough into the renovation of the building. This is what I call iterative design, where all the design interventions, all the architectural interventions were actually very clearly following what the building was needing. Now, the second point, a little bit about speculative redesign. I would like to take you to Budapest, where I'm from. It's a very ambitious project of 2 warehouses in the middle of the city, next to the Danube, which was extended, renovated, and, in an adaptive reuse process, into something that was meant to be something in between a cultural center and a commercial center. Now, despite the great design, despite the great project by Dutch architect Kaas Oster, who is the actual implementation, the development process had a lot of problems. The project ended up in a court case between the architect, the developer, and the municipality. It was half empty for the last 5 years, and now it's for sale, and nobody is actually interested because this is such a peculiar building and also such an expensive building to maintain that it doesn't really have a new function. Now, we talk about the big renovation project, which never really found its new function. A lot of investment, again, into practically useless project in the middle of the city. And as a contrast, I would like to bring you to Bratislava, very close to Budapest. I wouldn't like to, create contrast between East and West. We're in the center of the city, a market hall that was again abandoned for years. There was no practically, the city was trying to run it as a market. It created a lot of deficits, then it was empty. There was a lot of political battle to run the building. Everybody saw this as a huge value. But somehow as the people that we work with from the market, as they describe, in this big confusion and this political debate, they found a little path to actually propose a very simple idea. Let's rethink a little bit, exactly as many of you said before me. Let's rethink a little bit the history of the building, the potentials of the building. Let's start to run again a market, and around the market, let's build up a venue, an event venue that can actually also make the market feasible in terms of economic sense. Step by step, they renovated the building. They have an agreement with the city hall that they rent the building for €1 per month, but they have to invest in the building €10,000 per month, which is a lot of money, and this assures the renovation of the building. And also they realize that actually the building is so unique in the middle of the city that they can attract all kinds of corporate events and community events. Corporate events would pay between 6,000 and 8,000 euro for one day. Community events would be there for free. And now they already paid in advance for the next 6-7 years all these renovation costs. So this is a fantastic model, and no profit goes out of the community, no private profit is made because the whole structure of the operation guarantees that it is actually stays in the community. And the very last topic I would like to talk about is the question of instrumentalization, because we see that many of you before me mentioned temporary use, meanwhile uses, where people are invited to actually make use of some spaces, experiment with ideas, try new projects, new concepts, new functions. But very often this turns into a very instrumentalizing process. If we think of North Amsterdam, where the big NDSM wharf was given over for communities for 10 years, it created a lot of value, created a lot of visibility, and it created a huge conflict after the process when the 10 years was over and the city wanted actually to take it back. So to avoid this conflict, I think what we can witness today in Europe, there's a lot of new legal formats, new economic formats that allow communities to take a partial ownership of spaces. And again, joining Oana's comment that architects have to get involved in policy making, in also designing, new economic and legal forms. I think it's a very important thing to see how the value that is produced can be retained within communities. Now we're in Berlin. It's a heritage building from the 60s, which was on sale by the city in the mid-2000s, like everything else in the city. And the group of artists and architects and social projects and producers who were renting the building, they decided that they would go for the bids to buy this building. They came together with a few ethical financial actors that provided actually a model in which the building is owned by the community, the land is owned by a non-speculation foundation, and this assures for the next 99 years a community oriented use of the building, which has culture, which has social input, with social activities, and has productive activities. So this is something that now in Germany more and more municipalities are actually starting to work with these non-speculation foundations, because municipalities are obliged to sell some of their properties, but they don't want to sell their property. So this is a way to create an in-between kind of a commons ownership structure where the uses, the functions are assured for the very long time. Now, coming to the end, because I'm reading the sign that Fred gives me, is just to summarize this a little bit, that I think there's a lot of overinvestment that we see, and iterative design, creating a continuous feedback loop from experiments can help us avoid these mistakes. Also, we see a lot of renovation for renovation stake, and without a feasible new program and business model, and this is a very big mistake that we can do, and we actually do very often. And the third point is about community involvement. I think we saw examples of community involvement as a means of participation, but I would like to go a bit beyond, because many communities are actually holders of skills that make them able to regenerate this building. So we can do more than participation. We can actually give over some of the heritage assets to communities who have the skills, and we can see how they actually develop those assets into lively, economically also feasible spaces. So that's it, and very quickly, many of these stories were assembled by a book we published. This is called Funding the Cooperative City, which is online for free at cooperativecity.org. And we also run a project about new economic, legal, and management models of heritage spaces, and this is a Horizon 2020 project that we do with a lot of partners in Europe that can be followed on openheritage.eu. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Give him a big applause.